Ekavir really read a whispers that said it all, didn't he? 2 lines. Now I'll talk for 30 minutes. That was so perfect. Thank you. This reading is just subtle enough and ethereal in a kind of way that last night I was saying, we have to start with a joke today, just to loosen us up and get us ready. So I looked for a joke that I remembered that I had heard a non-D tell. It's a Peanuts joke. There may be some of you in the audience in the temple here who don't know about Peanuts. That dawned on me this morning, but it's been the longest running comic strip, I think, in the history of the world, by Charles Schulz, and the 2 main characters are Sally and Charlie Brown. Thank you. So Sally is sitting there, and she gets, and Charlie Brown walks up to her, and she says, "I hate this world. I hate everyone in this world. I hate everything about this world." And Charlie says, "Sally, I thought you had inner peace." And she said, "I do have inner peace, but I have outer obnoxiousness." It actually really does speak to the ability, because maybe some of us can relate to that, to have what appear to be conflicting things going on within ourselves, and they're actually not really conflicting, but just speak to how energy and consciousness can exist in so many different forms at once. I love the line in this reading where Swamiji says, a reference to the divine light that is obscure to the rational faculty, but that enlightens our highest nature. Because he's speaking, it's a very interesting reading, because typically we're used to hearing about darkness that will be fighting or struggling with the light. But that's not the case in this reading. In this reading, we're hearing about a darkness that can't even conceive of the light. It's just ignorant of the light. And of course, in this reading, the light is representing consciousness, but superconsciousness, God's superconsciousness. And the story that's being told, the message that wants to be delivered is that, and which Ekavir read in 2 lines, is that until we raise our consciousness up to meet that light of the divine, that light that manifested everything, but exists on its own plane of reality. It's here, but we can't reach it from here. We have to raise our own consciousness up to be able to perceive it. And until we do, we're living in a state of ignorance of it. Not stupidity, not ignorance in that way, just unaware of the light in many ways. That's sort of what makes a human existence, our day-to-day life. So Swamiji is saying here, it enlightens our higher nature. It's such a beautiful concept. And he's saying the darkness is there. It exists. Like what Lucy was saying. It was actually Lucy. I called her Sally, but it was Lucy who said that. It's interesting. Anyway, whoever said it, it doesn't matter. Inner peace and outer obnoxiousness, how they can both exist. In the most expansive of Swamiji's commentaries on this reading, in The Promise of Immortality, he has a beautiful analogy for all of this. He talks about music, and he talks about harmony and cacophony. talks about how there can be harmony or there can be cacophony. They can't exist together, but what he says is that they're not really separate in some ways because they use all of the same notes to manifest in whatever way, but they just rearrange the notes. So it's always all there. As soon as there's harmony, you don't hear the cacophony, but it's the same exact notes that make up both. I thought that was takes such a subtle concept. So the light is always there, the darkness is always there. The darkness will not exist once that true light comes in, but it's all made up of the same consciousness. And so he says in this reading from Matthew, the Bible reading, the darkness comprehended it not. He didn't say there was an argument going on. He's saying we're just unaware of it until we become aware of it. That's a reality, the darkness, that exists simply because of a lack of light. So this is subtle and somehow a little bit of a difficult reading, and yet I'm sure we're all sitting here knowing, again, just as that whisper said, the instant the light is there, it's as if the darkness never was. That's why that when Master said a room can be in darkness for thousands of years, we can live in a state of darkness in our consciousness and ignorance, which by definition we just all do. But the instant the light comes, as soon as we decide, really, that we don't want to live this way, as soon as we make the choice for the light, the darkness is just gone, as if it never was. I was struck yesterday when we were up at the village, many of us, at a minister's retreat, which we have every year. And of course, I was thinking about light. And when Davy stood up to speak, I noticed, which probably nobody else did, because most of you were not thinking about this morning yet, that within 15 or 20 minutes, she must have mentioned the word light a minimum of 10 or 15 times. I don't know, somebody could go back and count. But everything was about the light. And I started thinking about how often light is mentioned in all religions. Again, just speaking to the fact that it's a universal consciousness. People can have different beliefs, live in different religions, but there's so much about light there. We talk about light constantly here. We have a festival of light. Swamiji wrote a book, Cities of Light. We read from Rays of the One Light. There's a book, Rays of the Same Light. We do an arati. It's just endless. I started thinking about Hanukkah and blocking on the Diwali. But in every religion, I actually read about it last night. It's not important for us. But this concept of light is so central to our existence. So for everybody, everywhere, that it's just constantly mentioned. We constantly live in it. And I was reading even the opening 3 lines of the Old Testament, so older than the Bible, that we read from. And they're the first lines. God created the earth. Then he noticed that it was a little dark and murky. In essence, it's what it says, line 2. And line 3, let there be light. Let my consciousness create and infuse everything. And it does. So again, whether we're aware of it or not doesn't really matter. The consciousness is constantly there. And it's a decision for us. It's always there. But if we choose to live on this material plane, then we cannot know that light. If we live selfishly or badly in any ways, we won't know divine joy. If we live aggressively and divine love, if we live aggressively and meanly, we won't know divine joy, but it's always there. So to try and tune into what already exists in our life. There's a wonderful story that I remembered hearing. I went and watched the YouTube of it again last night, of a man whose name is Howard Storm. And maybe some of you remember this story, but it's very similar in many ways to other stories of what we call near-death experiences. He was a man who was actually rather religious as a child. He went to church, he prayed, he believed in it. But as he moved into adulthood, he decided he didn't believe in any of it. He became an atheist, and he became a staunch atheist. He couldn't bear to be around people who would speak about God. He would try to argue with them all the time. It was just how he lived. He was married, he had a family, just left everything about his religion behind. And one day he said he had an experience where he felt like he was shot in the abdomen. He actually thought somebody shot him wherever he was. But it turns out that what happened was he had a sudden rupture of that place where the stomach and the intestine come together. He probably had to do an ulcer and it ruptured, and that's what happened. And it was excruciatingly painful. And it's a major thing because all of the contents of the stomach and the intestine are now running around in the peritoneum where they don't belong. Keisha was shaking his head, yes, having studied all this to be able to teach a lot of it now. So he was rushed to the hospital, and they actually told him that they couldn't operate, and that he probably had 5 hours to live. But he was stubbornly holding on. He tells his story, and he lasted 10 hours, but he said the pain was so excruciating, he just decided to leave. And he said goodbye to his wife, and he literally just let the body go. So now he's in some astral plane, and a group of beings come over to him, and they say to him, "Come with us." But he said they were very gruff and very demanding, and he said to them, "Well, who are you? Are you the surgical team?" I mean, he was in that state of confusion, and we hear about sometimes when a soul leaves the body quickly like that. They wouldn't talk to him. They basically said, "We don't answer any questions, you just follow us." But he said he realized as he was going that they were going further and further into darkness, and he hated the feeling of them. He just didn't like being near them. And he said, "I am not going with you," very strongly. And then suddenly he heard a voice that said, "Pray to God." He's in a rather difficult situation right now, but he still says, "I don't believe in God." And the voice says, "Pray to God." And he said he heard it 3 times, but he couldn't think of a prayer. He literally couldn't remember a prayer. And I have heard this with other people who have had near-death experiences. Interestingly, many of them start singing the Battle Hymn of the Republic. I don't exactly know why, but anything. He said he did that. He said he started reciting whatever lines he could remember from the Gettysburg Address, like anything good and uplifting. Then he just started saying the word God, God. And he said he realized that the more he said the word God, the more the darkness rescinded. Yeah, it was leaving. He knew that. But he said when it was all gone and he was left alone, he started looking at his life. And he said he just realized that he hated everything about his life. He felt like he had been a total failure as a husband, as a father, in the work that he did. He just hated it. And then it came to him. He heard to sing the song, Jesus Loves Me, which I think is that simple little song. I wasn't raised in the church, but isn't it Jesus loves me, this I know? For the Bible tells me so. I mean, it's almost like a child's song. Of course, that's the way truth is, isn't it? It's very simple and childlike, but he started singing it, and he sees a pinpoint of light, and the light comes closer and closer to him, and finally this ethereal being puts its arms around him and holds him and just lets him sob and sob on his chest. He's just being held. And he said he started thinking, this is Jesus. Jesus came to me. And suddenly they started, it was a being of light, but they started ascending towards the light. And he turns to this being and he said it was very hard for him to say this, but he said, I think you've made a mistake. I don't belong there. And he said, the being turned to him and said, we don't make mistakes here. And he was lifted up, and in a moment, he was back in the hospital. He was told to go back. He was told he would go back. He said he was in the hospital, now on his way to the operating room. And what he said was, it was only seconds later. It was in seconds that he had this experience of the divine, somebody who didn't believe in anything at this point, but who held on to, he said these words. He said, I felt like an itty-bitty little child next to all of that light and wisdom. I mean, he was so humbled, hardly says it, but he describes this experience beautifully. A moment of light. He let in, pray. I don't believe in God. Pray. And he just finds any way that he can be close to God. And that is how strong and willing that light is. It's just so beautiful. And then to realize the light is always there. I was reminded of that story in the AY. I don't remember the places, but it just came to me this morning. But where Master talks about being in a boat in the Second World War, and then he was shot, and he was, as he got out of the boat, and he was laying on the beach, and he was dying, and then suddenly he would find himself back in the attic at Fort Corps Park Road, meditating. Finally, he says, I don't understand. Am I there? Am I dead? Or am I here seeing this light, meditating? And God says to him, it's no different. There is no difference. The light exists everywhere. And this is in part what this story brings, that no matter who we are or where we are, we go up, we go down, we feel happy, we feel sad, we feel good about ourselves, we feel terrible about ourselves. Really, who can't relate to that? But there's one constant, God, that light that shineth in all creation, that's always there. It's always there. Here this Howard Storm was basically in hell. That's where he was. That's what he felt. Oh, he said when he was following these beatings, and he told them that he wasn't going to go with him. He said they attacked him. They started tearing him apart. They tore his body apart. He said it was excruciatingly painful, but it wasn't physical because it's in the astral world. It was all of these horrible energies, and he was just lifted up out of that with a single thought, with a willingness. He said, I had no faith, but I had hope. So I started praying. I started saying, God, when we say, if you're in trouble, let's lift our eyes to the point between the eyebrows. That's a very serious, real instruction that is based on truth. This is where that light is. This is how we lift up out of the darkness. We spend a lot of time living at the base of our spine, where exactly where all of the energy is that says, I'm going to stay here. I like this separateness. I want to do what I want to do when I want to do it. I don't want to do all of what looks like such hard work to get up here to the light, to leave that darkness, to make this journey. That is what meditation is. When Howard Storm was up there for a few minutes, he said, I went through that life review that we hear about. He said, they stopped me. Nobody wanted to hear about my accomplishments. Nobody wanted to hear about degrees or the work I've done or what I had considered accomplishments, how much money I had made. They only wanted to hear how I had been with other people in my life. That's all they cared about. Was I compassionate? Was I loving? Was I forgiving? Those are the only questions that mattered. So this journey that we're all taking from the dark to the light, it is about that. Not because we have to get ready for the test. It's good to be able to pass that test. Clearly, in some way, he did, or that light felt he could come back, maybe just to tell this story. But that our life is about meditation, about trying to raise our energy to the light, about serving, about being compassionate, about caring for other people, about practicing seeing the best in other people. These are challenging practices when you really put yourself to it. You know, we have weekly meetings, the staff here, which is a joy. And we just had a couple of day, a 2.5 day retreat. We went down and we just stayed together and we meditated together. We did a lot of great work planning for what will happen in 2024. We cooked together, we took walks together. It was beautiful, just like our staff meetings are. And of course, so many other people are involved, but the staff is this four right now. And every week, we remind each other, every week, because, you know, it'll come up, this is being so difficult, or that person is once again, or no, we have to see that soul, what is their next step. We greet them with an open heart as much as we can. We remind each other because we need to be reminded. And in that loving, in that reaching out, in that unconditional acceptance, as often as we can do it, that's how we make progress on this path. That's how we move the darkness further and further and further away so the light can shine, and that it's not that we will be filled, it's that we will remember. I was listening to the chant this morning, come out of the darkness, Mother. And I thought, no, wait a minute, I know that's Yogananda's chant, so I have to be careful about critiquing it. But no, she doesn't need to come out of the darkness. We need to come out of the darkness to be bathed in her light. I just want to read one last thing in closing. I won't read it, I'll just say it. But I need to look at it. So, a story that Swamiji told, I read this, I didn't hear it, but he was speaking about Rajasi. Janakananda, who most of us know, was Yogananda's most highly evolved disciple. Yogananda said he often meditated in samadhi on the grounds of Encinitas and Mount Washington. And Swamiji's telling them that he was very close to moving into this state called Nirvikalpa Samadhi. It's a very high spiritual state. And he lived in that light in all of his meditations. And then in an instant, the light left. This is for Rajasi. And there was just darkness for him. He could not find that light. He couldn't get to it. And Swamiji said he was about ready to give up. It was a painful experience, I imagine. But he persisted and he persisted. And then one day, this is in a period of days, not months, he saw a pinpoint of light. And Swamiji says, a little point of light, and gradually it came closer and closer. Then the light expanded until it became Yogananda. And then the next thing he saw after he saw Yogananda was Yukteswar, and then Lahiri Mahashai, and then Babaji, and then finally he himself went into that light. Such a beautiful story. But Swami Kriyananda said that before we can merge into that light, each one of us will have to face a similar test of piercing through the darkness. This takes energy, it takes courage, it takes commitment, it takes willingness, it takes humility, it takes all of that, because we're going to have to, at the very end, just say, I am going to that light. I know it exists, and I'm going. And you can see through this story with Howard Strong, we can and we will if we are committed to it. And Swamiji says, cling with determination and even doggedness to the truth that is unchanging and unmoving. As I said, we go everywhere. Truth is truth. Light is omnipresent, ever existent, pure joy, pure wisdom, waiting for us. God bless you.
Lift your hearts up to the Lord.
Hallelujah, hallelujah. Spread the news that He is joy. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Sing in the mountains, sing in the meadows, sing hallelujah, God is joy.
Lift your hearts up to the